Hi everyone, so I'm going to be talking about beekeeping. So what is beekeeping? Beekeeping is the process of raising and caring for bees. Some people do this in order to get honey from their bees, and other people do it in order to help the environment. Beekeeping has been around for a long time and has its roots in North Africa, where bees were originally kept in large clay pots. The history of beekeeping is really rich and full, and it has continued to evolve and change throughout the years. So why is keeping bees so important? Bees are vital to our ecosystem. They do a lot to help our environment. They pollinate plants and help create rich and full biosystems. So in order to understand why bees are so important, it's first important to understand beekeeping as a whole. So as I mentioned, beekeeping is the process of caring for bees in a man-made bee box. The process of caring for bees is called apiculture, and when you have a large yard full of bee boxes, or even a single bee box, is called an apiary. People keep bees for a lot of different reasons. As I mentioned, some people just want them for the honey, and other people use them because of their ability to pollinate gardens and encourage growth of plants. So now that we've discussed a little bit about what beekeeping is, we can talk about how it's done. So keeping bees is actually a pretty complicated process, and it has a lot of different steps. One of the most important steps is the equipment. The equipment encompasses things like the big white bee suits that you see beekeepers wearing, and it also includes the bee boxes. And inside these bee boxes are things called frames. And the frames are a really important part of the setup of a bee box. Frames have this really thin wax material that the bees will actually use to build their comb and eventually put their honey in. So that's a really important step. You also need the bees. You can buy bees online or visit different farms and apiaries that have bees. So you have to get your bees, and then you also need a queen bee. The queen bee is the most important part of the setup because she allows for new worker bees to be born. You also have to think about the maintenance of your bee box. There's a lot of maintenance that goes into caring for bees. You have to check the box very frequently to make sure that mites haven't gotten into your bee box and that there's nothing that's potentially harming your bees, like different pathogens and parasites that can get in there and really harm a bee box. So the process hasn't always been done using bee boxes and hives and frames, and it's changed a lot since its conception. So how did beekeeping start? As I mentioned, beekeeping originated in North Africa. People used to keep bees in large clay pots, and they began doing this because the process of collecting wild honey can be really dangerous. Egyptians were also found to have used domesticated honeybees. They used the honey in order to sweeten their foods and also to help mummify their dead. There have been many pharaohs that have been found buried with large bee colonies with them. So, as I mentioned, there is a really rich history that goes back many years and has changed in a wide variety of different ways. So how has the process changed? So the process started really in a simple way with large clay pots, and over the years it has changed and become almost a scientific process. One way that people used to care for bees was to house them in fallen trees. So people would fell trees and then put their hives into these trees. And this process has changed and become a lot more sustainable and a lot more humane for the bees over the years. So although a lot has changed and been done to help aid in bee population, bee populations are actually still on continuing to fall. So what's happening to bees? Bee population, as I mentioned, has fallen over the years. The total annual managed honeybee colonies hit 45% in 2013, which is not good. Bee populations have fallen as a result of pesticides, pathogens, parasites, climate change, and also industrialized agriculture. So although bees are not technically considered an endangered species, they are threatened in a lot of different areas in the US. So the decline in bee population poses a really serious threat to our everyday life. So how does it exactly affect us? So as I mentioned, bees pollinate a lot of crops. They pollinate things like apples, broccoli, asparagus, melons, and cranberries. And they aid in biodiversity. They help support trees and plants and flowers, as well as the organisms that depend on these trees and plants and flowers for their food and their shelter. So a decline in bee populations results in a loss in a lot of the things that we consider part of our daily life, like a lot of the crops that we eat. So as you can see, bees play a really essential role in our world, and without them, we wouldn't have a lot of the things necessary to survive. So although bees might not be something that we think about in our day-to-day life, it's really important to be aware of them and be aware of all the living creatures around us and the jobs they play. And having an understanding of beekeeping and its history and its importance helps us stay interconnected and stay mindful of the things around us. So if you ever see a bee out there that looks tired, maybe offer them a little bit of sugar water and just appreciate everything they do for us. And yeah, that's about it. Thank you.